Good evening. You're watching News Cafe on the Solar News Channel tonight. We have a very special guest, newly elected official of the province of Camarines Sur. She's a lawyer, a mother of three, and the widow of late Interior Secretary Mitzi Borromeo. She is Congresswoman-Elect Leni Robredo. Congresswoman-Elect, thank you. Good evening.
Good
Can I call
evening,
the Congresswoman na? Pwede na,
Hindi
no?
pa, hindi pa.
Hindi pa? Okay. Ma'am, what made you decide to run for Congress? You know, I always thought that you would run for the Senate. Why not the Senate?
You know, it wasn't really in the plan. I was never planning to run. I had my sights set on being a judge. Mm-hmm. We had a candidate for this position already, the incumbent vice mayor of Naga City. But then something happened within the party. Last minute, they pushed me to run. They thought I was the only one who was capable of fighting it out with the political dynasty.
Yeah. And
So in the end, I decided to run. As late as the eve of the last day of filing, it wasn't really still in my plans. But on the last day of filing, everything went really crazy within the party. I was prodded on to run at 10 o'clock in the morning. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I found myself in COMELEC filing my certificate of candidacy.
what was that deciding point? What made you run finally?
You know, we had a candidate already, but another candidate under the same party also filed his certificate of candidacy. Our candidate thought that if there were two of them representing the same party, our people would break out into two groups, and it would spell the end of our chances of fighting out the dynasty. They thought I was the only one who can unite the party. Both candidates said that if I file my certificate of candidacy, they will both withdraw. It was not only for the party, but I thought then, and I found myself right, that if I didn't run, it was as if I was turning my back on the chance of defeating the political dynasty, which was at that time threatening to further extend its reach.
And the political dynasty winning would mean good news or bad news for the
Bad
district?
news for the district. There would be 4 of them in the family running already. When there was only 2 of them, the district was really suffering from bad governance. And there was a real clamor from the people for change of leaders already.
Can you define bad governance, ma'am?
You know, everything that was being made in our province was really patronage politics. There was no real desire to step up. For example, Naga is part of our district. Naga's numbers are very inspiring. Our poverty incidence was about 20%, while in the entire district, it was almost 50%. Malnutrition rate in Naga is 4%, while in the district, it was 20%. And Naga is part of the district. So it looked like Naga was an anomaly of the 8 LGUs. Naga was the only one performing. There was a real need for change of leadership in the district. And we thought by fielding our own candidate, it would be our best chance to finally put an end to a leadership that did not really give good news to the district.
What are the top 3 priorities in your district?
Livelihood, agriculture, health and education, that's 4.
So what are the first program for livelihood, for example, ma'am?
You know, the program is really comprehensive. I would like to think that the first order of the day would be to pass laws that would force LGUs to really excel.
How do you force an LGU to excel?
You know, my husband started it in DILG.
Oh, yes.
He passed department orders and memorandum circulars. For example, the Seal of Good Housekeeping is like a scorecard wherein LGUs should there are certain standards which LGUs have to comply.
Yes.
And if they do not comply with those standards, they do not get access to certain funds.
Okay.
I think it is high time to legislate. Those are just department orders. It is high time to institutionalize. Right now, we give incentives to better performing LGUs. But LGUs who perform below standards, we do not penalize. I think it is time to really force LGUs to excel, because if not, LGUs are the basic instruments for efficient delivery of services. In our district, I think it's the number one cause of poverty. Naga is part of the district, but Naga is performing well. All the factors are the same except for governance. So I would like to think that the other municipalities in my district outside of Naga would perform well given the right climate.
The right climate being people or systems?
Both.
Okay.
I think people should be inspired by their leaders.
Okay.
The system has to force leaders to really perform. My husband has always been telling us that it is not enough for a man to be good, but there has to be a system which forces him to be good. And I believe in that.
And I've been following your husband for many years, and I've spoken with him on the air several times about the Naga City Charter and a lot of other things. So, gawad galing po. What was it that your husband did first when he was during the first days of fixing Naga?
I think the very first thing that he did was to make sure that people start trusting government again.
Okay. Mahirap gawin yun, ah.
Mahirap gawin yun, but there was a lot of resistance when he was during his first term as mayor. But when people saw that all the efforts that he was doing was for the good of the city, for the good of the people, they became more engaged. The constituency became more engaged, and in that sense, they become real stakeholders in the development of the city.
Yes.
I think it's very important. My husband would always tell us that people empowerment and people participation is basic in good governance, because people participation not only gives voice to the underprivileged, but it forces government to do good, because government would always be on their toes if people are looking.
Do you think that the people of your constituency now are ready to participate?
I think so. I think the results of the elections showed us that people are now ready for change. It was the battle cry of our campaign. We told people outside Naga that if it was done in Naga, it could be done outside Naga.
Oo.
And they responded very positively.
What was your experience during the campaign, ma'am?
Naku,
Yun na,
napakahirap.
first-
Napakahirap, Jing. I did not even know if I would last until May. I filed my certificate of candidacy October.
Oo.
I was not prepared to run for any post at all. I did not have money. I was running against a well-entrenched political family who has
Yes.
been there since 1978.
Who have money.
Almost all of the local leaders were against me. Of the 8 LGUs, I only had one mayor supporting me. Of 186 barangays, I initially only had 24 barangay captains who were supportive of my candidacy. It was very hard. But what inspired me was that I knew that I was on a mission. I was inspired by the example shown by my husband. For the longest time, even if I was very apolitical, I helped him in all his campaigns. Parang I knew the formula. Everything I know about politics, I learned from him. So the little that I know, yun lahat yung in-apply ko sa kampanya, and it all turned out parang parang everything fell in its proper place. I went by instinct. maraming nag-a-advise what to do. Maraming seasoned politicians who would tell me, do this, you do that. But you know, my instincts told me to just follow what I knew. And as I've said, everything I knew, I learned from my husband. Parang yung formula niya was really the best formula of all.
Which is what, ma'am? If you were to think of just one thing that really worked for the campaign and bringing you to office, what would that be?
You know, iba kasi yung organization niya. I have observed that most candidates organized from top to bottom.
Okay.
Yung asawa ko organized the basic sectors eh. So essentially, lahat na sectors inorganize niya. And the leaders who would emerge from these sectors na inorganize would be the political leaders. Yung iba kasi, they would choose political leaders, the leaders would choose their followers. And I think the formula of my husband was more effective because people were more engaged. They had a more personal relationship with you. I think the key to my success as a candidate was that they saw me as a very accessible candidate. I did not have any money, but because I was very accessible to people, I gave them hope that if I win these elections, it would be easy for them to come to me and ask for help. I think it was very important to them that they could go straight to me without going through any maze at all.
How did the support from the LGUs change? You said at the start, konti lang yung
Konti lang.
1 out of 8 and 24 out of 120.
Alam mo, Jing, dalawa yun eh. Dalawa yun. Yung iba, sumama because I think they also believed in what I stood for. Marami na din yung naniniwala na it was really time for a different kind of politics. Yung iba naman, lalo na yung sumama in the end because they saw that I was winning already.
You're winning na. Sama
And
na
I
tayo.
think it's political reality
Yeah.
that people will always go for the one who is most likely to win.
Paano yung ngayon, your Congresswoman-Elect of your district? Do you foresee a continuation of support from the LGUs?
Ako, yes, but I am also well aware that the challenge is really there. A lot of people voted for me because they see me as an extension of my husband. Parang tinitingnan nila what my husband was, ako ito. Pero it's not that eh. While we believed in the same things, he was different. Siyempre, mahusay yun ang dihamak sa akin. And what scares me is that I might not be able to come up with people's expectations of me. Pero on the other hand, palagay ko yun naman yung aking motivational factor. I know that people expect a lot from me. So I know I don't have any choice really but to work really hard.
Okay, ma'am, we'll get back to our discussion. Let's take a short break. News Cafe will return after these reminders. You're still watching News Cafe on the Solar News Channel, and we're still joined by Congresswoman-Elect Leni Robredo. Ma'am, thanks for joining us. In the Congress, there are going to be a lot of bills that are going to be put before you. And there are a few that I'd like to rattle off and ask how you stand on them. The FOI bill, for example.
I am for it.
You're up for it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would like to think that an FOI bill would be essential for good governance. It will force government to be transparent.
Divorce.
I am not very sure, Jing, because I have not
bill.
really seen the bill. I am a lawyer and I handle cases mostly for battered women.
Yeah.
I have seen the loopholes of the law on declaration of nullity of marriage, but I'm not really very sure how the divorce bill has been crafted. So I cannot really say if I am for it or against it.
In terms of principle, ma'am, does the country need a divorce law?
You know, I think at this point, no. I think the law on the declaration of nullity of marriage is enough. But you know, I think we have to improve implementation of the law. I am staunchly Catholic. I still believe in the sanctity of marriage. And, you know, we have a lot of problems with the existing law, but I think it is sufficient for now. I just think that how courts implement decisions should be improved to give more support to women who are in difficult situations.
In terms of, you said you're looking at being a judge. What do you think about the justice system in our country? What has to be done?
I think we're still far from ideal. We have a lot of trust issues as far as the judiciary is concerned. I think, you know, parati natin pinag-uusapan ngayon yung matuwid na daan. I think it does not only have to cover the executive and the legislative branches of government, but should extend to the judiciary. Napakahirap kung ang tao walang tiwala sa judiciary kasi parang siya yung last bastion of, di ba? Yung justice for all.
Oo.
Palayo kailangan linisin.
How do you do that? How do you institute judicial reform today in this country?
Alam mo, I think it has to start from how judges are appointed. For many years, masyadong politika yung pag-a-appoint ng judges.
Yung process.
So maraming, parang pag upo pa lang ng judges, marami ng baggages. I think it has improved considerably under the administration of President Aquino. Pero kulang pa. Kulang pa in the sense na marami na kasing nakaupo na marami na talagang baggages. Palay ko dapat mas vigilant yung tao. Para kasing nagkaroon na ng impression na parang untouchable yung judicial system. I think it has to change. The judiciary must be open to changes, just like the executive and the legislative branches are.
What do you think the role of the church is in this country?
Ako palagi ko dapat sinestrengthen niya yung conscience. I don't think that the church has to meddle in state affairs. Pero role niya na i-build yung konsensya ng mga tao. Palagi ko, for a very long time also, parang model din yung role na piniplay ng simbahan. I think yung simbahan hindi dapat nakikipag-away. Dapat very active yung role niya para i-build yung concept ng tao of what is right and wrong. Palagi ko, ang laki ng parang malaki na yung vacuum. Parang recently, yung simbahan nag-involve na ng sarili niya sa issues na dapat hindi siya involved. But I don't think it's late. Our new Pope is a very inspiring Pope. And I would like to think he will inspire everyone in church.
Lately, ma'am, our country has been involved in many foreign policy issues. How do you feel about foreign policy issues, especially with our neighbors in ASEAN?
Ako kasi, iba-iba. Ako palagay ko, kulang sa atin yung sense of national pride. Parang for a very long time din, we always saw ourselves as parang inferior to others. I think it's time to assert our national identity. It's time to assert our strength as a nation. Palagi ko yun yung dapat maging guiding principle ng foreign policy natin.
Why do you think kulang tayo sa national pride? I feel that sometimes too. Wala tayong, hindi natin tinitignan yung ating pagkabansa o yung ating pagkapilipan.
Totoo yun. Palagi ko kasi, parang tingin natin parati tayong inferior sa iba. And I think it's wrong. Parang in many instances, we are just too willing to take a backseat. Pag pinag-uusapan na yung mga karapatan, palagi ko hindi dapat ganun. Palagi ko dapat klaro sa atin kung ano yung karapatan natin at klaro sa atin na dahil ito yung karapatan natin, kailangan ipaglaban natin.
2016 is just 3 years away. Have you thought about 2016?
No. I always told myself and I always told people that once I start thinking about 2016, that will be my end as a public servant. Palagay ko kaya nagugulo yung serbisyo ng mga public servants kasi parati yung consideration is the next elections. I think it is unfair to our constituents. If all we ever do is how many votes would this particular project give me, I think it's not right.
I'd like to go back to the issue of senator. Did people tell you run for the Senate?
Yes. But, it was never an option, really. It was never an option that I will run for public office. I only ran as representative of the 3rd District because it became a necessity.
Okay.
When it was becoming apparent that running for a local post was so much more difficult than running for a national post, especially for someone who does not have any money at all. Para sinasabi ko, siguro tama kayo, mas naging madali siguro had I run for another position. Pero no, as I've said, parang mission yung ginawa ko eh. It was not ambition at all. I never see myself until now as someone who will run for even re-election or for a higher post. Parang yung ginawa ko was something that was necessary for our district.
During the campaign, did it feel like you against this well-entrenched family, or was it the party going against that family, or did you feel that it was just you had to fight this battle on your own?
Ako naman. Initially, I felt that I had to fight the battle for my constituents. Actually, the misconception was everyone thought that I was pushed by Liberal Party to run. Not at all. Not at all. Never naman nila akong pinilit. There were offers from some quarters to run for this position, run for that position, pero never did they impose. Yung pagkandidato ko nga as congressman for the 3rd District, nagulat yung maraming party leaders. When I told them that I filed my certificate of candidacy, parang sabi nila, akala ko hindi ka tatakbo. parang ano. Pero when I was already a candidate, they were very supportive. During the campaign, the president came over twice. Ano naman, the party does not have any money. We were not really given sufficient financial support. Pero yung moral support naman andyan. Parang I always felt that the party was behind me every step of the way.
What were you up against on the ground? Kasi yung kalaban niyo may pera.
Yung pinakamahirap talaga kasi since yung kalaban ko andyan na sila since 1978, people were so used to their kind of politics. Parang because I was a candidate, people in my district expected me to give. Parang it was so difficult to make them understand that hindi ganito. Kahit yung mga local candidates who were allied with me found it very difficult that I was pursuing a policy of talagang hindi magbibigay. Napakahirap para sa kanila. But I always encourage them to keep the faith. Kahit natatakot din ako because I was a newcomer. Parang I really felt that people were behind me in that fight. Parang sinasabi ko, totoong wala akong pera because I saw that so many people were just too willing to volunteer their services. It was not at all difficult to get support from the people. Kaya sinasabi ko sa mga kakampi namin, magtiwala lang kayo. Kahit wala tayong pera, we will be able to do this. Pero they have been so used to a different kind of elections na marami yung hindi talaga confident that we will be able to see light at the end of the tunnel. Pero after naman everything, parang I was able to prove a lot of things, that money was not really the most important thing in an elections. Parang so many people were saying, totoo, popular ka, totoo, popular yung asawa mo, pero ang election kasi iba eh. Pero yung sinasabi ko sa kanila, magtiwala kayo because at the end of all this, I will be able to show you that hindi talaga yung pera yung importante.
At what point did you feel, ma'am, that you were going to win?
By the end of, because we had surveys, by the middle of April, I knew I had the numbers. Several third-party groups were conducting surveys left and right, and they were very consistent. I had the numbers. Pero when May came, sobra na yung vote buying. That was when I started worrying. Sabi ko, baka yung mga numbers ko wala na sa akin kasi grabe talaga yung vote buying. It was very difficult for me to convince my supporters that we will not do it. Lahat sila nagsasabing, walang nananalo sa eleksyon na hindi yan ginagawa.
Na
pero
hindi namimili.
parati ko sinasabi, yung asawa ko naka-6 na eleksyon, walang ganyan na ginawa, pero parating nananalo, overwhelmingly, I will be able to do it. Kahit yung media, yung mga political observers sa amin nagsasabi, you have the numbers, but elections is different. You might win in Naga, but you will not win in all the other municipalities outside Naga. But I proved them all wrong. I won in all the 8 LGUs in my district. And
that sent a message to the constituents.
Yes, that sent a message that we were people were really ready for change. Politics is not really all about money. Parang nadadala din sa sipag. I was the most diligent candidate. I was the most hardworking candidate. At 5 o'clock in the morning, I was out in the streets campaigning. I go home past midnight. Tinatawanan na ako ng iba mga kandidato. Para sinasabi nila, that's not how it is. But I saw my husband through all his 6 elections. I always saw that he was a very hardworking candidate, and being hardworking always pays off.
At night, after a long day's campaign, before you go to sleep or fall asleep from the exhaustion, what thoughts cross your mind?
Ako una, I was actually surprised that I was enjoying it. Parang at first, I was a very reluctant candidate. At first, after I filed my certificate of candidacy, inaaway ko pa yung asawa ko. Sabi ko, bakit mo kasi ako iniwan? Ano ba itong pinasukan ko? It was not something that I wanted to do. But being with people, iba talaga yung pakiramdam, Jing. I love being with people. Parang I saw that there was a purpose to why I became a candidate. Alam mo na, before this, I was a recluse. Tinutulungan ko yung asawa ko, but very introvert ako eh. But when I started campaigning, I realized that I like being with people. Parang when you see poverty in your midst, when you see suffering, parang you get inspired, parang you get energized to do more.
You think this is what moved your husband on?
I was even telling people, start pa lang ng campaign, sabi ko, I am excited to win already. Because I know I can do so much really for the district. Parang ganun pala yun.
Your husband is around your neck.
Oo. My daughters, all my 3 daughters also have this. Part of his ashes are in this necklace. We go around a lot. Sometimes you are in Naga, sometimes you are in Manila. Parang it gives us great comfort to feel that he is always physically with us.
Mm-hmm. Well, ma'am, good luck in your new career, and well, you seem to be enjoying. You seem to be excited in what you're about to do.
I am.
Well, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you for your
Thank you
time.
for having me.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for tonight. I'd like to thank my guest, Congresswoman-Elect Leni Robredo, for being with us today. Join us again next Thursday for another round right here on News Cafe. I'm Jing Saysay. Salamat po.